that go ahead and get started. Now that the stream is started, I can copy the URL into our chat room on Discord so you guys have access to the live stream, meaning you can rewind on the code along as we get to a code along portion of this discussion. Looking forward to this one today. It's on this concept of RESTful APIs. I feel like there's a lot of talk around APIs from programmers who maybe understand them well and maybe programmers who don't, beginners who don't understand them so well. So whatever your level of understanding, hopefully you can learn something new, learn something to add to your understanding. But if you've heard of an API before and you're totally unfamiliar, this is also for you because this is API 101 getting started. Okay, so we are going to start with some definitions of REST and what is a RESTful API, what's an API. They're textbook definitions, but then more just like how to think of them. We're going to what is the role of RESTful APIs in communication on the web? Then we're going to talk about some of the principles behind RESTful APIs. And so what are the guiding lights of RESTful APIs? How do you know if you have a good API versus a bad API? Good APIs follow the principles, bad APIs don't. As part of those principles, there's some general design rules. How, when you're first thinking of and planning and building an API, before you get to the building, what are the rules that you should follow of, how it should be built? What are the design principles? So if you think of this room, what are the design principles of a good room? How many doors? How many outlets? How many lights? These are design principles. These are guidelines for what make a good room, if you will, in construction. How do you design a good API on paper before you ever start to build it? And then we are going to build, okay, in a live code along. These are the textbook definitions of REST. I don't know that I have this one memorized. I think there's some important terms to memorize. I don't know that I have REST memorized in my head, but it stands for Representational State Transfer. Set of rules for designing networked applications. You guys are building software, and you're building software that's going to operate on the World Wide Web. Of course, the World Wide Web is a network, described as a network of networks all combined together. Okay, so our software, our websites operate on the World Wide Web. Therefore, our RESTful APIs will work on the web. API, again, textbook definition, application programming interface. That is one that I have committed to memory just because it's so commonly used. Application programming interface. Man, the definition on this one is one to commit to memory. Okay, it's basically how softwares communicate. I want you guys, you don't have to look at the screen. Look at me for a second. When users go to a website, you type in whatever.com, you might put slash whatever. Okay, websites are to communicate information to users. So when you're coding HTML and you're making endpoints for HTML, those endpoints are consumed by human beings. Okay, a very common question is now we're going to start defining endpoints, and they look a lot like HTML endpoints. And you would all agree that HTML endpoints are for human eyes. You understand that. A web page is returned with images and videos and headings and paragraphs. Okay? So HTML, you end up defining endpoints for human beings. APIs are endpoints for software communication. HTML, and HTTP and HTML communicates information to humans. API endpoints communicate information to software. The consumer of HTML is a human eyes. The consumer of an API is another piece of software. Make sense? Humans consume HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Okay. So that's like when I think of APIs, when I think of RESTful APIs, that's the first thing that I think of. It's not meant for human eyes. RESTful APIs are meant for software. Cool? Regardless of the textbook definition. Second thing I think of is, very simply said, it's the glue that glues together the front end and the back end. A RESTful API is glue that ties together the front end and the back end. We're going to make the RESTful API in Express, aka the back end, and then we're going to call the endpoints from our front end. Okay? So again, APIs are meant to be consumed by software. It's actually our front end software that is going to consume our APIs. And what does it do? It communicates. So a RESTful API is how you get the information, if you will, from the back end. If you're just reading data, that RESTful API is going to get the data, get the users, and send it to the front end. Okay? So, I don't know, as if there's some big breakthrough for you there. Maybe yes, maybe no. But number one, those are the two things that I have in the back of my mind. I don't need a slide to tell, that's my understanding of APIs. And I found those definitions useful. Okay, definition number one, it's not meant for human eyes, it's meant for other software. And it's really, the API is defined in Express. The API is defined in Express here. And we've already kind of done it when you say /users. And then it's going to be consumed by another piece of software on the front end. Okay? So the terms REST and RESTful APIs, thanks for actually looking at me. But the terms REST and RESTful, they're both interchangeable, is kind of what that third bullet says. Okay? Why are they important? By the way, there are other APIs. There are other types of APIs. Okay, REST is modern. Okay, RESTful APIs are the modern ways of building APIs. The old ways of building APIs were called SOAP, S-O-A-P. And the big difference there, well, there's a lot of differences, but that's just another one. There's GraphQL, I think, is something that Facebook made. There's maybe one or two other types of APIs, but those are not the most popular architectural style. So this REST is called an architectural style. It's how we're going to architect our APIs. They're just the most used. They're the most popular. RESTful APIs are the dominant architectural style of APIs. Okay, and you can see, Google and Twitter, X, Facebook, GitHub, YouTube, OpenWeather, Spotify, Stripe, Slack, Firebase. Most websites, they provide access to their code through an API, right? So, Facebook has some set of information that they want to make available to you. Maybe their marketplace, and they make marketplace data available through their API, right? So each one of these companies says, hey, I'm going to make this API for other developers to consume our data. And this is the part. Some of their data might be accessible. Some of their data is obviously not going to be accessible, right? And another example of a Facebook API. Have you ever seen login with Facebook? So Facebook must expose username and passwords through an API. Otherwise, other websites couldn't get access to it. Okay, so RESTful APIs, very popular. There's a lot of websites that are out there. How many people in here have consumed an API in some way, some shape or form in this class? 2, 3, 4, most people, okay? And you might have known really well what you're doing, you might have had no clue. Many times they make it pretty easy to access data, right? So sometimes you're just reading information. I don't know, I'm going to make this up. 90% of the time you're just reading information out of Facebook's data set that they're providing access. It's kind of like a window into Facebook's source code. They're only going to give you this much, but whatever they can give you access to, you can find, your Facebook feed and integrate your Facebook feed into your website, right? You've seen this kind of stuff, right? Well, Facebook makes that available. It's their source code. You're just able to call it, interfacing with your front end, calling Facebook's API, and now you can get your user feed on a website. Okay, they're the most commonly used to create communication between the front end and the back end. Again, it's the glue between the front end and the back end. It can be your own back end, or it can be a different back end. And it's also important to mention here the back end, because it's confusing because sometimes the front end's very clear. It's what the user sees. That's React in our case. The back end is the application running on the server, which is often called the middle tier. Because if it's a 3-tier architecture, that Express server could be called the middle tier, or it could be called the back end. But for sure, the database is the back end. So Mongo is for sure always 100% of the time the back end. But sometimes that middle tier, you'll hear that middle tier, be it Express, referred to as the back end, which is true. I mean, the user can see front end code and they can't see the back end code. The end user cannot see your Express code, but they can right click and inspect your HTML and your CSS and your JavaScript. Okay, so the back end exposes REST endpoints. Again, we're defining endpoints in Express that's considered the back end. And then the front end calls the endpoints to receive data, like read operation, or send data, like I'm creating a new user, I'm posting a new product, I'm creating a new whatever. Okay, so for all of you who brought pencils and pens or are actually taking notes, okay, I'm going to quiz you on this, not for points, but for fun. I'm going to quiz you for this, and we're going to stand here awkwardly if you don't give me the answer to my quiz. Okay, so I'm going to ask you at the end of this, what are the REST API principles? And they are numbered here, okay? And just to make it even more awkward, I will call on each one of you. You don't get to raise your hand on this quiz. I'm going to make it super awkward for you. And I'm going to say, give me a REST principle. And I'm going to call your name, and you're going to have to tell me one. So if you're not taking notes, we're just going to stand here in awkward silence, and all your classmates are going to look at you. So take some notes. REST principles. I don't know about the importance here, but REST uses HTTP methods. I'd probably start with that. Even though it's number 2 on my list, I'd probably start with that, but then let's go in order. Everything is a resource. And so a user, an order, a product. And so you could have a bunch of resources or a single resource, a bunch of products or a single product. But at the end of a REST endpoint, there's a thing, a noun, a person, place, or thing, also called a resource. Okay, so these RESTful endpoints are working with resources, things. What again? I almost think you could call it a resource. Maybe there's a better word for it. I like nouns. At the end of it, there's a noun. There's a person, place, or thing that you're working with. REST works with HTTP methods. What are the HTTP methods that we've worked with so far? Remind me.
JavaScript, HTML, and CSS.
Nope. Those are just different. That's it. So we heard HTTP GET, which would get a resource. Post, which was, what's post do?
It creates a new one.
A new resource. Did we do any other ones? We did. Put, which did what? Updates. And delete, which of course deletes. So we did CRUD. So HTTP is a protocol of the World Wide Web. It enabled communication across the internet. Okay, the internet is the physical routers and cables and switches. Okay, so think of the internet as the highway. Okay, and for anything to go across the highway, we sent it across with HTTP, and we receive it with HTTP. It's like a set of rules that govern sending information down the highway. In HTTP, they make these things called methods, and we just listed those methods. Okay, and again, that's how we send and receive information across the internet. So number 1 and number 2. Number 3, HTTP is considered stateless. My friend of a friend, Eric, just talked about stateless. Stateless means client server forget about one another. Why did the chat have to persist? The chat had to persist because after the initial response request, client server forgot about each other. Okay? I don't know why in my mind, every time I think of stateless, I think of a one-night stand. You meet each other once, then it's over. And it's a bad joke, but that's what it is.
You said that exact same thing in the video you had sent.
I know, I remember that one, right?
Even saying how
You meet, you greet, and then it's over. Okay? Maybe I need to find a better joke.
I can't wait till this video comes out.
No, we're not. Yeah. How to lose a job real quick. No, look, this is a...
exact same thing as the other one.
Didn't get me fired last time. But you get my point. Client says, hey, I want to get a resource. Give me the resource. The server responds with the resource, and then they forget about each other. They don't know who each other is. So the next time the client says, hey, I want to update this resource, the server says, who are you? I don't know who you are. So it's stateless, meaning they don't maintain information about one another. They don't maintain information about each other. There's no session IDs here. Okay? So it's stateless. It uses endpoints. These are the URLs are often URLs is plural. URI, Uniform Resource Indicator. It's basically a path. It's a path to get to the resource. The path is defined by forward slashes, and it's a hierarchy. It goes from more generic to more specific. The further down the path you're getting more specific. It's like going down folders in a file system. You're just getting more specific down into your path. Okay? So the API principles, again, resources, methods, stateless, endpoints. That's 4. You're on endpoints? I like this. I threaten you with awkward silence and everyone's all of a sudden taking notes. I know. And I appreciate that. The server, although it is stateless, it does respond with a status code. It is the principle. A good RESTful API will do all these things, include respond with the status code. There's categories of status code. 200 is the good category, okay. 400 means there's a problem with the client request. 500 means there was a problem on the server side. So broadly speaking, we'll narrow these down, and there's all sorts of different numbers. Everyone's favorite 404, resource not found. 404 is a problem with the client. You requested a resource that doesn't exist. Okay, 201 was when we're posting a new resource, we're posting something new, we're creating something new, the server sends back 501. The server crashed, 501 error. The server crashed. That's a bad thing. You don't want the server to crash, obviously.
Which one's 300 again? It's like you requested multiple. It's like multiple things that you could have requested and you special.
Yeah, Google that for me. I'm not remembering. 300 status code.
I've never seen it.
I derped that. I apologize. It's not even in my list. You think it was in the list? What's the 300 status code? We'll ask. What is a 300 status code? I don't recall. Multiple options for the resource requested, and the client must choose from them. Multiple choice status. Doesn't seem common to me. I haven't seen that, at least from my memory. Regardless, thank you for bringing that up. Number 6, RESTful APIs are scalable. What does that mean? Scalable means they're not running on local hosts. That makes sense? Why? What's local host? Local host is your local machine. What happens when you get 1 million users? Can your local machine service that? No. They need to be on multiple servers. You know, you'll hear terms like sharding, where your code might exist geographically different locations. So depending on your region, your code can respond faster to a closer server. And they can grow. As more requests come in, you pay for more resources, and it can grow. The problem with localhost is that it's pretty constrained in the amount of processing power that it has. When you put it on the cloud, for example, on G Cloud, you could just pay more money and you get more hardware. It scales up. More requests, more, and it's not that simple, but broadly speaking, you don't want it on localhost. That's what scalable means. And it should be JSON. And I said, this is JSON or XML. Just say JSON. It's 2025. We're not doing XML anymore. Okay? Those are your REST API principles. We're not done taking notes, but this is just a really good screenshot of what a client request and response, number one, again, it's stateless, so they forget about one another. But the client represents on the left. Everyone sees on the left, the client says, hey, I have an endpoint. Now, this is a front-end piece of software, right? This is something like React. So this request is coming from React. This is not coming from Google Chrome browser. It's not like we're plugging in that endpoint to the browser window. Okay, this request to this endpoint is going to be coded in your React app. It says, hey, I know this endpoint exists on a server on this .com/review/new. Okay, that's the method. Again, the method comes from the client. We're going to say this is a post. That means I know it's going to be a new resource. It's going to be a new review of whatever. Okay, and then you have this HTTP headers. So notice that there's an endpoint, there's a method coming from the client, and there's this thing called headers. Okay? You guys have maybe heard of this term called metadata. Okay? How is metadata defined? What is metadata? My photographers will know what metadata is. Anyone in here consider themselves a photographer?
It's information surrounding the request, like metadata on photos, like data was taken and format and stuff like that.
Yes, data about data. A photo, if you got a nice camera, you take a big photo, and really nice photo, the photo itself is the data. The metadata is the data about the data about the photo. The date the photo was taken, the time the photo was taken, maybe the location on the world where the photo was taken, the geolocation, the amount of pixels that it stores on a hard drive, how many pixels, megapixels or whatever. Okay, it's data about data. That goes in the HTTP headers. So what really goes in there? Well, one of the main things is this authorization. When we start dealing with user accounts, you have to be authorized and authenticated. So just because client server forget about one another doesn't mean that they forget about. You have to have a way of transmitting like, hey, I belong here. I've already authenticated and I'm authorized. So this authorization status, are you logged in and are you authorized to access this endpoint? So I put this in here because that's a really important piece of information, is that metadata about the request goes in the HTTP header. Okay, and then the body of the request. So this is considered. Notice how I put the REQ, right? Remember in Express we got rec and res. Well, rec is coming from the left. This is all the information coming from the client request. On the left it's the client request. On the right, notice they receive the request. They execute the request. Status 201 we know means what? What we just said 201 means, what did we say 201 means?
Create something new.
It created something new. It worked. It worked. So this post successfully created something new. And it sends back a JSON. See this little right here? This little JavaScript object that says success. That comes back from the server with our status, because that was one of our principles that we need a status code. Remember in the first week, I bet you we can look at our labs, and many of our, on the hands-on test, I said put the status codes in there. But maybe on your labs, they might not have status codes. It's important, according to this, that all of our status codes from our servers are always sent back. All right, and then it goes back to the client. The client then receives that success message, and then what does it do with it? Well, React will react. React will say, good job, okay? New customer created, or excuse me, new review created. Okay, so what we will do in this class is we will perform CRUD on MongoDB resources. MongoDB resources are our documents inside of our database. So those are our resource. You guys know what CRUD is. You guys know how to map the CRUD verbs to the HTTP verbs. Okay, we already did that exercise. The one that's unique here, I will point this out. Look at put versus patch. Okay, these are the recommendations for both of them, are for doing edits. Can you guys read that? Put is when you're editing a resource and replacing the entire thing. Versus the recommendation is patch if you're just updating a part of the resource, not the whole thing. I think a lot of times when you're doing updates, a lot of times you're doing a patch. Now, by the way, this is a recommendation. I understand that there might not different developers may operate differently, but these recommendations come from, and I didn't mention this, but like if you study like where RESTful APIs came from, there was like a creator of this architecture. And he has a name, I forget his name, but these are his recommendations. Okay, so the guy who made this architecture for APIs, these are his recommendations. So developers in the real world, you could use a put to do a partial update, and it will work. Does that make sense? And even down here, it says you could use a put to create a resource, and it will work. But you shouldn't, because, again, the guy who created the thing tells us how it should be done. Okay. Now, there's also, the first time I studied RESTful APIs, and even it's probably about 5 years ago, and I made some, because we were not teaching MERN stack and we weren't teaching any of this in this curriculum, and I made some labs where to get the products, you guys remember /products/list? Did you guys code this in your lab? You remember a list route? Mm-hmm. Yes? Can everyone shake their head? You remember a list route? You remember a list route, right? Yeah. So that endpoint is called a URI. That URI to an endpoint, there are best practices around how to make the best URI endpoints. Like, what are the rules? We didn't cover that. We covered the design principles. We have not considered the best practices for URI routes. So I've updated I've updated my learning, and instead of going /product/list, it's better off at just /products. It's also to get a singular product, it's /products, plural. You guys don't pay attention to this stuff, but it's important. Plural products /ID. And that drives people like me crazy because /products is plural, /ID is singular. Why are we going to should it not just be /product/ID?
And you're pulling from the entire product list a specific.
I could see that, but to me, products means multiple, and I'm not returning multiple. You're returning one.
Yeah, the ID is singular.
That's right. The ID is singular. So why this is the case is it gets confusing on words that have a singular spelling, goose and geese, right? So if you're getting all your, what is it? A goose is singular and geese is plural. So getting all geese would be /geese. But then you have to change the word to /goose /goose ID. So it gets hard when you have words that mouse and mice, right? So for that reason, the recommendation is just make everything plural. Just always make it plural. Okay, so /product, and it's pretty simple then. /products, /products ID. To add a new product, we're posting to products. To update is put or patch a products /ID. Okay, just keep it plural, problem solved. Cool? And then to delete a product is /products /ID. Same thing here. Again, there's best practices here. And we start talking about versioning. And so you can have different versions of your API. So it is common to start your pathing, your routes with /API. And then as we have versions, you put the version in here as well. You could say /v1 because your versions can change. Okay? And so then it makes it really clear, that if you change this and you start saying v2, well, the v2 endpoint might operate differently for some reason than the v1 endpoint. So it's helpful in your API backends to put versioning information, v1, v2, so on and so forth. Otherwise, this slide's really just the same. So I just wanted to share that extra tidbit. I'm going to take that off. All right. When you have good REST design, again, there's a bunch of benefits. What does it take to have good REST design? I guess first, number one, we got to follow these principles, which we're already doing. But here's a few rules around URI rules. So one question I will ask you guys, or what are the design principles, or the REST principles? What are the REST principles? And then what are the URI rules? So this will be another question that I'm going to follow up with you guys.
Say what URI stands for again.
Uniform Resource Indicator. I believe I is indicator. So URL is Uniform Resource Locator. It's kind of like any URL. URL is, again, like a singular versus plural. But a singular URL is referred to as URI.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I like these because the good is in green and you see a plus, and the bad is in red and you see a minus. So you want to do the things in green, you don't want to do the things in red. Okay, so resources should be plural. You guys remember in C#, your variable names matter. Your endpoints matter. Your resources should be plural. URI, I already talked about that once. So resources should be plural. Number 2, now it says a singleton resource means a unique resource, meaning there's only one of them. There's only a single resource. So there's only one of you, your social security number, if you will, could be a unique identifier for you. But to get a user out of the database, you put the ID behind it. So in this case, it's /players/ that's the player ID. That could be referred to as a globally unique identifier, or GUID. So that is just a unique, kind of like your social security number is unique to you, a GUID is unique in the database. Rule number 3, no trailing /. I don't make those up, but I like that one because that's one less keystroke. No trailing / at the end. Rule number 4, hyphens instead of underscores. It says to improve readability. Would you guys look at number 4? Nod your head if you think that's more readable with hyphens. I think it is some sideways. Some.
I would think same thing.
What?
I prefer underscore.
It depends on.
I mean, that's what they say about opinions. You're allowed to have your opinions. I tend to like the hyphens. And I'm imagining I don't know, find it more readable. Anyways, okay, I agree with them. Number 5, lowercase letters instead of capital. No capital letters. Six, no file extensions.
You said 7 is lowercase letters instead of
5 is no lowercase letters.
uppercase.
No uppercase letters. 6 is no file extensions. 7 is that you do not put the verb in the URL. So the CRUD function names should not be used. It was very common there for a while to say get user or list users. You're not putting the verb in. Where does the verb go? Well, the verb goes as part of the request. It's actually up to the software to pass the verb along. But it doesn't actually need to be in the endpoint. In number 8, let's read this one. The query component can only be used in collection resources. Now, this one, for example, says, what is the query component? First off, you have to understand that question mark is referred to as a query string. That's what that's called. And that passes additional information like input parameters, okay, into your methods. And this one says, hey, give me all the users with a role of admin. Obviously, you're not doing that on a singular resource. You're just getting that resource. So that's, to me, common sense type stuff. Okay, so those are URI rules. Turns out there's actually 4 levels of API design. Because we're software developers, we count them from 0. We go 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever. But there's 4 levels. So level 0 is considered bad API. But if your API passes 0, 1, and 2, that's where 99% of APIs are on the internet today. They're level 3, which is 0, 1, 2. Level 2 or level 3, depending on how you count it. Okay, just to hit this real quick, this is where I extracted to make all this stuff. Okay, so basically everything we've covered so far, I think you can find in here. And if you follow all the rules I've given you, we are at level 3. Okay, we are at level 3 if you follow all of these rules. You can read about this. By the way, the guy's name is Roy Fielding. And this was like a graduate, dissertation at Stanford. He's a real smart guy, and he came up with this idea. But, basically, we're meeting his approval at the 3rd level. The 4th level, this, and you can read about this at another time. I'm not going to go into it. I read it myself, and what I understand is it's just not worth. In order to reach this level, the amount of work needed is way too much work to get any sort of benefit out of it. It's like you're making your API better, but it just isn't. It doesn't do anything for you. So this, like, oh hey, level 2.2, you got status codes. Again, we talked about that. And so again, we don't need to get to the level 3. We just need level 2. Query parameters, we talked about like sorting. You put that in the query string. HTTP headers, authorization headers, talked about that. All your verbs, we talked about that. It's going to happen on HTTP. All the rules, / is a hierarchical relationship. No trailing slashes at the end. Okay. So all that just to say, if you follow all the rules in this document, you're making good, solid RESTful APIs. Okay. Now another important thing to remember is that basically RESTful APIs mean that they're sending to the front end JSON. From the back end, they're sending forward JSON. And so in the old days, you would send XML, and that was with the SOAP APIs. You guys familiar with XML a little bit? Not at all. XML looks like HTML, but you get to make up your own tags. So, like, that works. You could have a first name tag in XML, and I put my name in here. End first name. Okay, and the purpose of XML was to transport data, just like the purpose of JSON is to transport data. You're sending data from the back end to the front end with XML or with JSON. But just because JavaScript is everything nowadays, JavaScript, I don't know if it's considered more lightweight. I'm kind of wondering in my head, again, I'll ask, what are the benefits of JSON over XML?
I think it's very readable.
Simpler syntax and readability, faster performance. I was going to suggest that faster performance was there. Of course, it's happy to play in JavaScript land. Ease of use, ideal for APIs. JSON has become the de facto for RESTful APIs because it's lightweight and efficient. Okay. I was going with performance. Okay. What's important on this slide, I think, is actually the last sentence, if you guys just draw your attention to that. On the front end, we're going to use a dependency on the front end called Axios. Okay? So we are defining our RESTful endpoints in Express. It's very similar to what we've already done. Right? All we're going to take is what we've already done, and we're going to expand on that knowledge. We're going to have some more rules around the endpoints. and we're going to send back status codes. And now instead of sending back an array that's just in memory, we're going to be sending back resources in a MongoDB. So actually working with a database. But it's Axios on the front end that is going to be used to call our API in Express. Now, Brody, I know you were calling an API and you were not using Axios. You were using JavaScript. Correct. What was built into JavaScript that you were using? You remember? No. 5 letters, starts with the letter F, ends with etch. Fetch. You got it. So we're going to use Axios because that's a very common dependency in JavaScript world. But there's also the fetch API. So these would be 2 options. We're just going to use Axios. The whole thing about Ajax is how you update a part of the page without an entire page refresh. If you guys have been around the web for long enough, you might remember a day, like if you would zoom into a Google map, the whole browser would refresh. Like it would require a whole page refresh to update a small piece of the web. Same thing if you have an old email app. Like if you got a new email, it wouldn't pop up in your browser until you refresh the page, right? But modern Gmail, like you get a new email, boop, it just pops up. It does a partial page refresh without refreshing the whole page. Okay, so that's JavaScript that does that. But built into JavaScript is these couple of methods. Together they call that Ajax. But it's basically JavaScript. Okay. So Ajax stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. We don't use XML anymore. We use JSON. So what am I trying to say here? We're going to use Axios. Axios will call our backend routes and update of using behind the scenes. Axios uses Ajax. So it'll do partial page refreshes. You don't have to update the whole page. If you create a new user, it could just say new user created. You don't have to refresh the whole browser and have this whole slow experience because that's perceived as slow. You got to wait for the response to come back. The whole page has to load over. It's not a good thing. Yeah.
We're not using XML. Why don't we just call it AJ?
I don't know. Yeah, AJ, whatever you want to call it. You can. I'm not going to be offended, but I'm just saying, yes, fair. That's the acronym, and there you go. Look, bunch of resources. Probably my favorite resource on here. I put this one out here. API Vault. This is it is what it sounds like. You can find open APIs that are out there that you can connect into. You'd be amazed at the information that is publicly available on the web. We were talking about all sorts of stuff that's out there, but that's kind of a fun one just to explore different APIs based on your category, right? So I had a student who built a final project last semester on anime, but he didn't want to populate all of his anime movies because they're already out there. The movies, the titles, the shows, the description. Why not just call a public API and read that in? You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Right? So modern software, you will have to be familiar with how to make API calls. Right? The process is typically this. Right? Broadly speaking, you're going to need to, let's just say I go to here. Let's just say whatever, Anime Facts. Typically, I have to register an account. Typically, you have to register for an account. When you register for an account, they're going to give you a key. That key can track how many requests you're making. And they give you so many free requests. And like any software today, after your first 100 free hits, now they charge you money. Okay? So that's typically how it goes. You make an account, they give you a key. That key is considered private information. You don't want to share your key on the internet because then other people can make requests with pretending like they're you. And now if you're paying per usage, if you're paying for usage and someone else is using your key, then you're paying for their usage, right? Does that make sense? There's a bunch of APIs that are out there. Some of these are fun. Some of them are useful. Weather APIs, NASA API. This is a cryptocurrency. Thank you. Forgot how to talk about crypto. Pokemon, everything else. Currency exchange rates. Brody, that's your next way to make a quick buck. All right. Okay. At the end here, we got 2 more slides, and I promised this was coming. In your own words, what is an API?
It sets up rules and protocols for
Sets up rules and protocols. Yep, that's the language. Communication. I'm helping you out. For communication between softwares. Okay? It's the rules and protocols for communication between software, more or less front end, back end. Cool? So APIs, how else would you define it? That was like more textbook definition, which is good. How'd you define it? Like how did I, in my head, how did I describe it?
a one-night stand.
No, that was not that was stateless. Stateless is the one night stand. It's the
A useful way to pull data without a whole bunch of extra stuff.
okay, I like that. You're pulling data from wherever the data is stored.
It's software to software communication.
Software communication. That is also true. I called it the glue between the front end and the back end. That was the one I was hoping you would remember. The glue between the front end and the back end. But, REST APIs can do more besides read operations, right? Because I think that's pretty common out here, like this API vault. You can pull a lot of data that's out there. What's the current stock price for Apple? You can get a lot of current information using an API for stocks. Okay, but you can do other operations. Create new, update, delete operations if you have permissions to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, like 99% of the time or whatever it is, I don't know how often, it's mostly a read operation. Okay, now we're going, what is the role of RESTful APIs? It's kind of two in the same. It's the glue between the front end and the back end. Okay, so the back end is going to communicate with the front end via a REST API. That's the role of APIs. Ties the two together. The two important ones that I was going to ask, what are the API principles? And just going back, I'm on my slides, just for a number, there's 7 of them. What are the 7 REST API principles? Did you take notes?
Yeah.
Good. Give me one.
Stateless.
Stateless. You took that one.
Endpoints.
They are endpoints. Cool. Ryan?
Oh, you're pointing me. HTTP status codes.
Okay, they're going to send back status codes. I'm good with that. Nia?
Scalable.
Scalable. Good. Courtney?
Send back JSON.
JSON? What are we missing out? That was 6, I think. What did we forget?
HTTP methods.
Did we say HTTP? It uses HTTP.
Status codes.
He said status codes.
Yeah, both of those.
Method.
I don't think that's not yet.
Yeah, HTTP, and I think that it sends back status codes. So I think we got all 7. Perfect. All right. Now, what are the I said API design rules, but this is
URI design.
URI. Yes. URI rules. What are the rules around URIs? And again, I'm just going to get my count. So we're going back. We're going with Brody first. They got 9 of these ones. Holy moly.
I'm starting with Brody start.
Oh, Quinn, thank you.
Hyphens over underscores.
Hyphens over underscores because someone says they're more readable even though you guys don't agree.
No trailing forward slashes.
At the end of the URI, there's no trailing forward slash. Correct. That was 2.
They should be plural.
Your resources should be plural even when you're pointing at a singular resource. Correct. Going back to Courtney. That was 3.
Current function name should not be within the URL or URL.
Thank you. Yeah. Your verb should not be, whether you're getting something or updating something, it should not be part of it. That was 4.
Lowercase letters instead of capital letters.
Lowercase letter, all lowercase. We got 4 more to choose from.
No file extensions?
No file extensions.
Collection resources should be plural. Wait, you said that.
We got the plural one.
Singleton resources should be singular and can be replaced by a unique ID representing the resource in the database system behind it.
Singleton resources are identified by their unique ID.
The query component of the URIs can only be used in collection resources.
Okay, so the query string should only be on a collection resource. So slash users, question mark, role equals admin. What did we forget? Did we forget one?
Was file extensions
I think so.
uppercase?
Prep functions should not be used in URLs.
Singleton, no trailing forward slashes, hyphens instead of underscores, lowercase letters, no file extensions, names, query component. Oh, I don't think I said this. The query component of a URI should be used to paginate collection resources. I don't think I must have been zoomed in too far. I didn't say that the first time. Okay. That's the end of the lecture. You guys did a good job in this awkwardness that I made you go through. Let's take 10 minutes and we're going to do some code. When we come back, we're going to code. Just for anyone watching this video in the future, I'm just going to put a big note on here that says break for 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's only an hour and a half after the break. What the class?
Didn't even realize it was supposed to rain today. It's pouring rain outside.
Yep, it's pouring.
I thought that's what you were doing. I don't know.
I'm just stealing all your stuff.
We are going to do a code along, right? And so if you're following the live stream, that's a way to rewind versus just following my my screen share on Discord. I would choose the Discord, or the live stream over the Discord so that you can rewind. It's not a mandatory code along, but I definitely recommend it. Practice, practice, practice. Three minutes, we'll get started. 'You guys want to start from where we left off or start over? Probably with the project I was working on is the Lawn Connect. Remember that?
Yeah. The
Lawn Connect. We're just gonna start over. This is
Probably makes it easier for people watching
well,
later.
I'm concerned with you guys.
And yes,
I'll do it twice is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do Lawn Connect Mern twice. I'm gonna do it once today and I'll do it once tomorrow. Because tomorrow will be a little bit more fleshed out. We'll do a very basic demo today, and then we'll flesh it out some more tomorrow. So we can start from scratch for practice today, and then tomorrow we'll start from the repo that I have, and we can clone on that repo. Okay, my clock's got 2:50. So I'm going to get started from scratch, a new folder on my desktop. And I'm just going to call this new folder my API Full stack demo, FS demo. Folder name has little relevance here, but that's what I'm going to call it. Again, I recommend you coding along with this demo. Open that, right click, open with VS Code. By the way, if you're missing this option, it's just you didn't install it and click that box. It's really nice to just right click and open with VS Code. That's an installer option. How do we start up a node project?
Create and find at latest.
That is one of the commands, but not that's the second or third.
npm
npm init or npm I for short. Yep. Well, actually, npm I is install. So yeah, npm init. And if you want the control C out of that, npm init/y is kind of the defaults. That'll create your package.json. That's probably the question I should have asked. How do you create a package JSON with all the defaults? And I'm going to add a type of module here. And I'm going to have a... It does say that the main file is index.js. So to start that, we just started, yeah. To start that, okay, I want to talk about the start script really quick. I left that out. The start script is what it's going to use on deployment, right? Don't leave the start script out because you need that for deployment. But in development, we can call it the dev script, and here's the command that I use. We're going to load the env file .env index.js. All right. Now, Courtney, you recommended the npm npm create vite at latest. And this command will create our React app, right? So this will create a new app, a new React app. And remember, what we do is called a mono repo, where we put our Express server and our React app in the same repository, a mono repo. And so I hit yes there. And I'm going to call this folder the front end. So the project name front end, vanilla JavaScript, these are actually some different questions. Install with npm and start now? Sure. These questions seem different to me.
I've never seen those either.
They updated the installer. Unless I ran a different command. I don't think I did.
How do you usually get React and
Yeah, but they never gave the. Looks like I never did the.
Yeah, I didn't get the option to select React, did I? Did I select React?
It should have been in framework, I thought.
Well, it built my...
You,
That's what we did, right? npm create vite at latest. Whatever. Seems like it worked. So that's just running the front end. But that's all under that. Now, real quick, I'm going to cd front end, and I'm going to run the script. The build. So in front end, npm run build. So that builds the dist folder that we need. And if I do npm run dev from here, it does the same thing. Localhost 5173. Cool.
Mr. G, I got a different front than you.
You got a different front end than me?
Yeah, I got the usual one. Did you select React? Yeah.
Did I not select
You did not.
Oh, I just did
You
this.
selected vanilla.
Oh. Okay, I'm just gonna redo it. I didn't realize. Okay, of course it's all locked up because I had it open. So let's delete it from there. Now let's open this back up.
Should be React. Yeah, he did it.
I'm retracing that.
How do I go back?
Just Control C. There you go, and then rerun it, and then put this out. Yeah.
Hey Anna, you could follow along on YouTube if you like. Did you select vanilla?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna hurt anything. If you select vanilla. Don't.
Yeah, I'll just redo it. It's not a big deal.
I had to delete it from the hard drive. It's not gonna hurt. Let's.
It really doesn't want you to delete it.
Wait, I thought it was vanilla and then JavaScript and then React.
I select a framework. I say React. Then I select JavaScript.
Something happened to this or something? Did you wrote down device?
No experimental. Yes. It's nice that they boot it up for you now, anyways. Okay, close. Control C in the terminal. CD front end, npm run build, just to get the static files built. CD ... to go back up. And we're ready to build our Express server. Index.js. Let's go Hello World Express. Again, I got the type of module. So what I do at this point is I go to I go to the Express here. I go getting started, hello world. And I just bring the boilerplate Express app in. I replace this, import Express from Express. And I probably need my linter is unhappy with my import statement, even though must have had a typo. Import Express from Express. So I'm going to do npm run dev on the back end. I don't have my .env file. .env. Port. Been using 8080 lately. Okay, so now I got to install some dependencies. So what dependencies are we installing? Obviously Express and debug. npm I debug and Express. I think I did that in a different video where I installed multiple at once.
After the CD data, you just run npm run start, right? Not run start dev, right?
I just have the dev script this time, yeah.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind. We're not going to.
And it's just one thing, right?
Thank you. Cool, so now we got debug and Express installed. Now we've got Express up and running. And what I like to do is put http://localhost:/port. So it becomes a clickable link. And we get back hello world. A couple of boilerplate things to bring in as I get rid of the Express route. So app.use is middleware. This allows us to accept form URL encoded data. So this basically from form, and this allows us to accept JSON coming into Express. So these three lines right here are what I just added. But I kind of wish they would just add those, well, at least these two lines into the hello world. Now it loads our front end that's in the dist folder instead of loading or just sending back some hello world. I made the practice of a routes folder, and inside of routes I had another new folder called API. And this is where we'll make our modules for, I'm just going to work with users. And import express from express. We need router equals express Okay, so really just to get this up and running, we're going to make an express router and then export that router as users router. And I'll do a router.get, leave it empty. See if I can just do that. Res. Okay, this will be res dot status 200 dot JSON user list. Now we're going to be wiring this into Mongo. Is where we're going. And we'll get React to display it. So that's kind of the objective for this, right? By the end of this, we'll have our users from Mongo database being displayed in a React web page. So back over here in index, let's do app.use /API/users. Now check out that line of code. Await routes API users JS. So what's nice about that is it's asynchronous. So I'm really curious. So now we have /API/users, and there's your default, and if it hit at that, and if it's at users list. So let's, if I boot this up, I like that syntax. API users, and we get back users list. That's cool. That way we don't keep this import up at the top. That import up at the top is unnecessary unless you hit the user's route. So now it's kind of written in an asynchronous way. Should be more efficient. All right, I'm going to spin up Atlas. Connect to my sample databases. And I'm going to create a new database. And this will just be demo API calls. Users collection. So my database is demo API calls, collection name users, create the database. And have you guys heard of Makaru?
Yeah.
You guys remember this from maybe last semester?
Yes.
So this generates fake data. So let's see. Let's see if I can't generate some fake users in here. First name, last name, email, gender, IP address. I don't need an IP address. This looks like if check, the first row will contain column names. I don't want headers. I want this in JSON. And I want 50. And let's generate the data. mockdata.json, going into my downloads. So if I open that up with Notepad, there we have an array of 50 fake users. And let's get this into Atlas. So now, oh, you know what? I don't need an ID because object IDs will be created for me. So let's delete that. First name, last name, email, gender. Sure. Let's try that again. Mock data, save it, override it. Okay, now we've got our users without an ID, which again, I think, as you guys have seen, when you insert something new, it'll generate a object ID for you. Add data, import JSON or CSV. Let's just see if we could say mock data JSON. How about it? Nia, you did something like this, did you not? Yeah.
Yeah, except I didn't use the Makaru website. I just kind of generated it with like ChatGPT.
You generated with ChatGPT. Yeah. Yeah. But that's pretty nice. It's a nice little, just, you know, import from JSON.
Really nice.
Yeah. So now that simplifies that. What's new here? And so everything up until now, I would say, has been stuff we've more or less done before. Tried to simplify it a little bit, but you should be vaguely familiar with that code. We have a new npm js.org MongoDB. So here's the official MongoDB driver for Node. Okay. Everyone can hear me, right? Ryan, you can hear me? You guys will, if you watch other people's tutorials on Mern, there's two ways to connect to Mongo that are very common. Way number one is with this node driver. This allows you very granular levels of control by writing your own queries you guys just spent a lot of time last week and the week, 2 weeks actually, learning MongoDB queries, right? You guys feel vaguely familiar or vaguely comfortable writing Mongo queries now?
Yes.
You're getting comfortable writing queries?
Yeah,
You're getting comfortable. Because you guys know how to write Mongo queries, I'm going to encourage you to use this node driver. Because again, you can write your queries very directly and modify it however you want. There's another package called Mongoose. And Mongoose is the, I believe it's called an ORM, Object Relational Mapper. Mongoose.
That's raining very, very hard.
Yeah, no
or
kidding.
it was.
Anyways, Mongoose is another way of doing it. I prefer this way. Seems more code-centric, at least from my understanding. And so let's install this MongoDB driver. And we do so with the npm I MongoDB. So we're going to stop the backend from running. I'm going to install MongoDB driver. You know what? Give me a second. I need to look up okay. No problem. Here's what we do. So, repository homepage. Hey, REST API tutorial. Express and MongoDB. Okay, I know what I need. I just needed a couple names of variables is all I needed. So now we're going to connect to Mongo. And so I'm going to make a different module, right? I'm going to make a database module. And this database module, I'm going to put it in the root of my app. And from this, I'm going to have a couple imports. Mongo client object ID from MongoDB. Let underscore DB is null. So if there's no database in memory, we're going to go okay, so we're going to make a connection string mongo URI const db name process env dot mongo db name. Okay, so there's two variables that we need to put inside of our .env. So this mongo URI. Okay, and this is where we're going to go back into Compass. And I'm going to disconnect. I need to disconnect my connection here. Disconnect. And I click Edit Connection. And here's my connection string. So here's the URI, here's all that with my editing is gonna, okay, I'm gonna click this button and do this off the screen so you guys don't see my password. So I'm gonna click that button. Even then it doesn't fully reveal. My connection string. Now, you know, at the end of the day, I'm gonna delete this database anyways, so I'm not even super concerned with my revealing this. Nonetheless, so there's some credentials, and my database name is not this. Good guess. My database name is what? If I bring this back over, connect in, demo API calls. Capital DAC. Demo API calls. Okay, so we've got a Mongo connection string, and we've got a database name loaded from our .env. You can await Mongo client. DB equals client DB name. Return DB. Okay, so here's a function called connect to database. You heard that term earlier today, singleton. This is a singleton pattern because it only instantiates this once. If there's not a database, then go ahead and, you know, spin up this variable and then return that variable. But if that variable is already in memory, then you don't have to do this multiple times. It's an efficient way of making sure that you're only, you know, creating this in memory once. Okay, so now I'm going to make a async function called ping. And this calls connect to database. Make a fun variable name called pong. Await a command of performing a ping. Now I'm going to import debug from debug, and I need to make my channel debug db. So there's my channel called app database. My .env, I need the debug equals app : star, I believe is the syntax. Let me double check my work.
Yes.
Debug equals app : star, so that's needed right here. And then we can make a debug channel here, debug db. Thanks for double checking my work. And now we can call debug db ping and then stringify that object called pong that returns our command. Okay, so we got this function called ping. This function called ping calls connect to database. We try and essentially ping the database, and then if it works, it'll put it in the debug. And I'm going to export this function, export ping. Export that ping function from my database module. And I think all I have to do over here is import it. I think if I just import ping from database.js, I don't know if that's enough to actually call it. Let's boot this up. No, let's see. Named export object ID not found. Did I? Oh, interesting. Okay. I had to get rid of that import. I wasn't using that import, so no big deal. But now let me go down here. If I just say ping, we get this database response. So that's a good thing. That yellow message right there is a good thing. We have now connected our Express app into Mongo. Okay, we did so by making a connection string and database name variables. So here's our connection string. Here's our database name. And the fact that we can now ping, because keep in mind, this is working with a very specific database name. So connect to database pings that database. It's a good thing. So now all that practice that you guys had writing Mongo queries, now we get to leverage that a little bit. Whoops. Okay. Minimize you. Minimize you. back over here, let's make another function, async function get users. Const database variables, await connect to database. Take a look at line 26. That query looks pretty familiar, yeah? I'm going to put a capital U on my users collection because there's my users collection. So, you know, we saw case sensitivity before, so let's make sure that we've got case sensitivity configured there. So now we've written a function in our database module called get users. We've exported that function, so let's import it. Where do we want to import it? Well, I don't want to import it here. I want to import it over here in the users, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this user's route. Okay, let's import get users from, let's see if this path is right. We go up, we got to go up a directory, go up 2 directories, database.js. Now when we go to, let's again follow the full path. When we go to get our API users, right? This is basically the end of that path, router.get. You could think of this as a forward slash, although we just learned don't put the forward slashes at the end. Remember that? Remember that? So I'm not putting that forward slash there. You just learned that. This is an asynchronous method on line 8. Because this is an asynchronous method, we must mark our anonymous function as async so we could call await, right? If you, line 8, if you try doing this, that doesn't work. This will tell you your function await are only allowed within async functions. Remember what we're doing here is writing a function. In this case, this is an anonymous function that's an arrow function. So this anonymous arrow function needs to be marked as asynchronous. Oh boy. So this is our API endpoint. API get API endpoint / API / users. Pretty simple, all lowercase. Are we following all of our rules? What were our rules? Lowercase, hyphens, plurals, singleton resources, marked by their ID. Query strings, there were 2 rules on query strings. We're following all of our rules. It's a simple path really when you follow all the rules. Let's see if we can hit this. That shows our front end / API / users. Heyo. We're halfway there. This is good. This is great. Do you believe me? Are you happy as I'm happy? Why is this not complete? We've only made the back end. We've only made the back end. We got to make the front end. We got to make the front end. How might you display 50 users? Well, Probably in a table of sorts. You know, we got to make like an HTML table. Would you show this to your end users? I hope not. Maybe.
Depends on the target audience.
Yeah.
Target audience is a computer. It's a good job.
If the target audience is a computer, it's fantastic. But this is not our target audience for the front end. So we now have an endpoint to get our users, all the credentials are passing. We're connecting to Mongo from Express, pulling our mock data. We're in a good mood. You know where it got weird for me when I was learning this? Has it gotten weird for you guys yet or not yet? This has been weird this whole time. Learning this world. Has learning
It's a lot to take in.
it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's why I started from scratch. Hopefully a little bit of repetition was helpful. Because what's new so far? This database, for sure. This database is new. And we've got 2 new variables here. Where to get this information? Pretty straightforward. You just go to Mongo Atlas. Where it got weird for me when I was first learning this is to have the realization, because this is a mono repo, you kind of have 2 projects in one going on here. You've got package JSON here with all of our dependencies for Express. Everyone sees this, package JSON. If I close that, but check it out, there's also a different package.json.
How many package JSONs does this thing have?
This has 2. Yeah, that's when I'm pointing that out. This has 2. This is the front end package JSON. And it has different dependencies. So we're going to bring in on the front end, we're going to bring in, what was that package for the front end to hit the back end? It wasn't fetch. It was the other one. What was the other dependency to query? Axios. Thank you. So I'm going to go cd front end. And I'm going to install a dependency in the front end called Axios. Axios.
Did Axios get hidden another? I know a bunch of the NPM packages got hacked again.
I didn't hear that.
And I got it a second time, but I forget which package.
I hope not Axios.
That'd be tragic.
npm I Axios. Install Axios on the front end. Hit enter. By the way, I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to be available to help you guys do the same thing. If you're following along, you fell behind, that's normal. You have the rest of class to do this, right? That's all we're doing today is finishing up this demo. Okay, now we've got Axios on the front end. Okay. So let's go now. We're kind of working in the front end now. I'm going to go into the source JSX file, right? This is our component that shows the home page. This app JSX component. I'm just going to delete this right here. Okay, I'm going to delete the count. Okay, and delete this. Oh my. You guys look at my screen real quick, if you can. Maybe you're not catching up, but I just want to point out the tool is using fetch. It's not using Axios. It's suggesting fetch because that's built into JavaScript. But I want to use Axios. So it's actually really close to what I need. Yeah, use effect and all this state, all this stuff. But I'm going to import Axios from Axios. And now it uses Axios. Okay. Is it safe to assume that, like, when you guys learn React, like, you remember nothing from React? That's where I need to start from. Very little. Okay. So
It was like HTML just with a little bit of JavaScript in it.
yeah, so it does. It has components, and you're going to see a lot of JavaScript intermixing with HTML, right?
Yeah.
And so you build components, and components are like your own little tags. You know, like we're making app JSX component. And then you can reuse a tag a bunch of times. So you make this app tag, and if you want to, you can reuse it. So in React, your variables are stored in what are called state. It's just your variables. Your variables are stored in what's called state. It's pretty normal to say, like, the state of the web page is like, what's the information in the web page right now? That's the state of the page. So when you import use state, notice right here, there's two things here. There's actually line 7 creates a variable called users to store our data, and a function. Notice how this is in a different color. That function is called set users, and that's set users is used to put users into our users variable. I am jumping ahead talking about React, but you need to hear this multiple times, I think. It'll be helpful. So again, we have a variable and a function to modify the variable. That's what we have on line 7. We're creating a variable and a function to modify the variable. This function right here called useEffect. See, this is a singular function. This useEffect. I mean, more explanation is needed, but think of it as page load. When the page loads, run this function. There's more to it. But for now, think of it as page load. So when this app component loads, run useEffect. Inside of useEffect, we have an anonymous function. We're creating this called fetch users. It is asynchronously calling Axios.get to hit our endpoint. Now, where is our endpoint? That's not exactly it. It's http://localhost:8080 API users. Again, AI is 90% of the way there, but it doesn't really know where our endpoint was exactly. So I believe this was correct. If I'm not mistaken, that's just what we just hit. So response has a lot of information, including the data. So there's a data object with our array of users. So response.data. So we call set users to put data into our users variable. We then call fetch users, which this is just a unique syntax to define an asynchronous function inside of useEffect, and then call that asynchronous function. These empty brackets basically say just do this once. Okay. So now, if this works, and maybe there's an error in it, but if this were to work, we would have this variable called users, and that users would have data in it. Cool. That variable has data in it. Now we get to display that on the page. Users would now have data in it, so we get to display it on the page. That's where you code this. And so let me look at my syntax for this. you don't do it every day. Cool. Hi. Oh.
What's
I'll be done at 4 o'clock.
and
Yeah, give me 13 minutes.
okay.
All right.
Happens at 4.
I have to have a conversation with her.
Okay.
All I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a map function. Remember, mapping is loop, like a loop. You're going to loop over all of your users. Okay. Each user. This is about as ugly as it can get. So I'm going to put maybe just put a HTML table, a bootstrap, class name of table. Try and get a little formatting in here. Maybe table, I think striped. And then close the table. And then each user will have a table row. Oh. Let's not even worry about the table right now. I can bring the table in later. Let's just see if I can map out each user with a username and email. Now, let me get my property names because it's first name, last name, and email, right? So first name, last name, email. So user first name, last name, and the underscore ID is, I'll talk about this here in a little bit. What is that? So user first name, user last name, put them in a div so they'll be stacked on top of one another. This is all inside of app.jsx, and so let's npm run build cd dot npm run dev. Okay, now I don't expect this to work. I was right. Uncount promise. Failed to load resource API users 8080. Oh, yeah.
It's on 800.
No, I see that. You're right. This is on 3000. Oh, it is on. I thought it was on 8080. Let's see. Hold on. Back up. Close you down. Control C. Clear the screen. Index. This needs to be this. Const. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, const port equals that or 8080. So here, let's not do that. Actually, yeah, let's update it. It doesn't matter. We're going to do it right there. Port is that. So now my back end, you guys were troubleshooting faster than I was. I like it. Run the dev backend script. Now we're on 8080. Now if we boot it up, we got people. Hey. I don't care if it's stored key. That's the end of that demonstration. We got a full stack MERN reading Mongo database, Express, React. This is a beautiful place. I'd like you guys to get here as well. Okay, so we got 30, 40 minutes for the rest of today for you guys to get here. Code along, follow the video.